Good evening and welcome to West Ham Irons United for a Gift of the Gab special. Oh, Anton, you're here. You made it. Well, I bet you're in real trouble with Mari.
Oh, mate, don't get me started.
Yeah, I bet you are. Well, I've already told the lads why we're late, and for once, it's not me. It was this man, that man there.
No comment.
Gift of the Gab. It's a Gift of the Gab special, a finances special. We did this, I think, around about 6 months ago or so, where we had a couple of special guests on who, talked about the finances of the club, etc. And we thought we'd do an update, given that the finances have just been announced again pretty recently with another loss. And during the pandemic, as the next year goes by, I'm sure the losses will increase. So we've got a couple of experts in. Well, we've got one person who's an expert and the other one
supposed experts.
So shall we bring the supposed expert on first, Sean?
Well, it depends. I don't. All right, okay, yeah. Didn't know who you wanted to offend first. Oh, hold on a minute. No, Stel, hold on a minute. Before we carry on, we need to promote something, don't we?
What?
Our show, our daily show. Not that we would do that,
show, mate. We've been doing that like forever.
Oh, honestly, see the guys in the background. See the guys in the background. They actually get the joke. Honestly, I can't believe you don't get that. It's all right. Ignore him, guys. Ignore him.
Why? What have I done now?
It's fine. You obviously don't pay attention. You obviously don't pay attention to messages when people message you. It's fine. Don't worry. We all get that.
I was getting the show, mate. I was getting the show ready, mate. So there you go.
Come on. Carry on, Mr. Presenter.
I heard what Nigel said on More Than Just the Podcast. He tuned in to watch my show, and I ended up promoting the show. And then he said, "Oh, you could have done that in 5." I heard all that. Anyway, let's bring them on because I'm just chatting shit and makes a change from you chatting shit, really. So
right, there we go. Good evening.
Well, I lost my bet because I sort of had a bet with Nigel that you would waffle on and we wouldn't come on to 1:30, so we're sort of 6 minutes early.
But Nigel got it right that we said 8 o'clock.
I thought you'd do like an advert for One Football or whatever your sponsor is this week, and then waffle on about your daily show and some non-news stories and I mean,
I threw the hook there for him, but he never bit. So
I didn't know what you're talking about. So there you go. I was busy getting the show ready, mate. So there you go. So Anton, do you want to tell us, run through how we're going to do this tonight?
Good evening, everyone. Well, first and foremost, we should introduce our guests. We've got Mr. West Ham Football, Sean. Sean, let everyone know who you are. It's not as if they don't know who you are.
I'm AI Sean. No, I'm not AI Sean. I don't know who AI Sean is, but I'm Sean Whetstone. I'm not an expert in football finance.
Well, if you're not AI Sean, who the hell is that?
Actually, I think you was right there first time, John.
I have written a lot of articles about football finance, and obviously I host More Than Just a podcast, and I'm the associate editor for Clarendon Hugh, if you didn't know that already. Hated by the masses. Boom.
Yep, where Still gets most of his content for his West Ham Weekly. And your next guest is obviously Nigel. Nigel, let everyone know about you, mate.
Yeah, welcome to my new show on Irons United, where I look at West Ham United's history of the week. And the first game I'd like to show you is Bank Holiday Monday is the 40th anniversary of West Ham beating Bristol Rovers. Why is this a special game? Because it's the day that we got promoted from Division 2, old money people, into Division 1 in 1981. There you go. That's the first show done still.
There we go. Right.
The rest are better than that.
When this finishes, we're going to take a snippet of that and we're going to put that out as an episode of the Daily tomorrow. Are you ready?
Exactly. You sure are. Sure are.
No, so basically, obviously, Sean, yourself and Nigel came on, as Stell mentioned, about, what was that, roughly 6-7 months ago?
About 6
months ago.
Yeah. To discuss finances, related. At the time, there was a lot of negative press in and around the media around where the money was going, what was happening with the money. So you decided to come on and do a show to kind of explain where the money was and give everyone a little bit of an insight. And then obviously there's been more updated. Now we're on the 1st of April and there's a lot more updated information. We've had a full season pretty much now without any fans in the stadium. And there's been a few changes. So we thought, let's do it again and give us an update, really. And that's how it goes, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm a poor man's Kieran Maguire for the YouTube shows that can't quite afford an expert, really.
Well, you're the next best thing. And we've got a comment here about the slides that we're going to present. Gary wants to know if they're going to be better than last.
Never mind, Gal.
Well, you couldn't display them. If you remember, some of them were cut off and everything. So you have done a little practice time, haven't you?
Well, myself and Still went on late last night. Literally, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And between the two of us...
I've worked it out.
Yeah, right, cool. You could have passed that information on to me. So Stell's going to be in control of the slide.
Setting up the show. So there you go.
So, Sean, before we go into it, or Nigel, just give a brief explanation as to obviously the reason you want to do it, and what the fans can get from tonight, really.
I guess, a lot of people find finance boring, and it is a bit. But we've gone through. We've made one of the biggest losses in our history. We thought we'd explain it because if you read the headlines, they can be a bit misleading because our year end changed and some of the money moved around and some more money was put in and we borrowed money from Michael Dell. And, it can be all a bit confusing because people speculate. So I'm going to try without spin to say, well, look, maybe it's not as bad as it seems. This is where the money is. This is where we're borrowing money. This is what's happened. This is which shareholder died. And maybe go through some of the bits that have happened in the finance world in the last sort of 6 months since the last time we spoke.
And
answer
Nigel,
questions.
Frankly, I had nothing better else to do. It's Good Friday tomorrow. I ain't got to get up and go to work. So,
yeah. And to be fair, let's just be honest. As you know, if you've listened to Nigel's latest podcast with Ian Dale, I'm his yin to his yang, or the other way round.
In other words,
he's not even read the slides, by the way. He's not even
read the slides. You make it sound like a pair of Chinese pandas trying to make some.
So he's come in completely as it's like Morecambe and Wise. We're a double act. We come as a double act, but he's not even read the slides. So this is going to be the first time he's actually seen the slides.
That is true.
Well, what he's really doing is he's come here to keep you in check. That's what he's doing.
Yeah. He keeps me in check, so I don't go too kind of pro board or anything,
Yeah, not that you would ever be accused of that. Sure.
No.
Well, listen, but before you get started, though, we had a couple of interesting topics, I think, during Stell's show today. As you can see, Stell's otherwise engaged in whatever he's getting up to.
I'll be back in 1 second.
There he goes.
The cat's running.
Yeah. One of the key things that you hear a lot of people say when you do YouTube, etc., is, the two of you in particular you are best friends. You'll always have each other's back. It's not about having each other's back. It's about rhyming off information and having someone to check it. It's fine that people have all got different opinions, but still, I'm mentioning there was a couple of comments in your chat today about well, if it's going to be Sean saying it, and is Nigel going to stick up because it's Sean? And what we were trying to say is, no, every West Ham fan's got their own opinion, and it's whether or not it doesn't matter whether you agree with it or whether you don't agree with it. All we're trying to do is make
interesting.
But all we're trying to do is make people understand the finances a little better, rather than maybe running off wild on Twitter or social media, we're putting the blame in the wrong place. And that's not me saying not to blame the board. That's just me saying that you could have to pinpoint exactly or know or have the knowledge of what you're talking about when it comes to finances. I can see the comment from Mr. Guilty in the comments already.
I was going to say, I found the comments interesting earlier today because, people keep asking where the money's gone. And, it's what I alluded to what Nigel said several times, that, we have spent money. We just haven't spent it wisely. But people just have this impression that the board doesn't spend money. It's just that Sullivan shouldn't dabble in the market, in the transfer market. That's the simple rule in a way. But other than that, should we jump in?
This? I mean, to answer where's the money gone? Do you know where the money's gone?
Well, this is what we're hoping to find out.
Well, we'll talk about this. Over 90% of the income went on players' wages. They deferred money for a little while, but they deferred it. The key word deferred. They didn't take a pay cut. They deferred it, and then they got paid it. So nearly everything we earned last season paid players' wages.
Cool. I think I was going to say before you get started is if anyone wants to get any comments and any questions they want to ask, what we'll do is as we go through the presentation style thing we're going to do, we'll try and stop at certain segments and answer specific questions. And also, I believe you guys can see the comments as well. So if there's anything you want to pick up, we'll try and put them up on the show. What are you going to say, Nigel? Come on.
I ain't got. I'm looking. Here's my glasses. All right. So you might be able to see them, mate. Whether I can read them or not, it's another thing.
Should we kick off? Should we get this?
I hope you've all got a beer. I hope you've got a cup of tea. I hope you've got whatever all your beverages ready.
No,
get yourself buckled in.
I did forget my beers. Let me just. That's it.
Yeah, I've got. I'm decorating at the moment. I've got the fridge right next to me. All I've got to do is just lean over. So when I get really fed up, I'll start drinking. Are we ready?
Look at the professionalism of that. Look at that.
Look at that.
Right, on you go then.
Okay. Just tell me when you need to change slides, Sean.
So this is a headline. So obviously, when we're talking about the figures that were released recently, they're for last season that ended in May, not for this season, because that's the way it works. They have to publish figures 9 months after they finish, but they had an extension because of the pandemic up to 12 months. So in March, they published these figures. I think it was March the 8th. But they talk about last season. And of course, the interesting thing is the pandemic didn't really hit until March. So we're only talking March, April, May. So the pandemic only had 3 months impact on the figures.
5 games.
Yeah. So I thought it was 9 games, but okay, fine. I thought it was 5
but our finances were affected by 5 games. So the season was 9 games.
Yeah. So the 140 million was our turnover, down from 191, so 51 down. We'll talk about that in a minute. Ticket revenue actually only went down 4 million, right, because of the home games we missed. Commercial activity, which is the corporate and sponsorship, etc., was only down 1.5 million. TV income, this is where it went. That was down to 82 million. Usually it's 120 something. Retail did all right, down 200,000, but we dropped. If you do follow Deloitte, and there's been a lot of things going, well, we dropped from 18th in 2019 to 26 in this year. But we're going to discuss what that means. So if we go to the next slide, Stel, that's your job. Now, this season, and this hasn't been released, but this is my estimate. I did this last time. I reckon we're going to be up, not quite as much as the year before, but I reckon we're going to be up to about 181 million, around that in this season. Ticket revenue was almost nothing, right? Because obviously no one's been. The only obviously games, and where I get to 500,000 is 2,000 went to the Man United game. We're expecting 10,000 to go to the Southampton game. If you work out an average ticket fee, as I did, you get to about 500,000. Corporate will be down, so that will be down about 8.5 million. TV income will be up. And that's the important thing. So actually, the reason our income was so low is 5 of the games got moved from last season to this season. So because the year end moved and our year end finished, this is a company's house thing that finished in May. Well, we played another 5 games after May, and therefore that income, that TV income, got moved into next financial year. So it's going to bump up next year's accounts. TV income, I've estimated to be 150 million, and the reason is I put us for finishing 6th, very ambitious. Maybe could finish 5th. We get paid 5 games from last season, but we also get paid a lot higher. We finished 16th. You get around about £2 million, £2.2 million a place from finishing. We finished 16th last year. We could finish 5th or 6th this year. Now it is worth £300,000 a place less because of COVID, but still, I think it's going to be a bumpy year for TV. And I put
Sean, can I ask a question on that?
Go on.
It's a bumpy year on TV, and yet there are more games being shown on TV. So the TV companies have still got the ability to, earn income from advertising and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There aren't people at the stadiums, but it doesn't matter. If you're televising a football game, you're televising a football game. You're still able to advertise. So why is it that the TV companies have suggested that they've lost money from that? And why did we have to compensate? Why did Premier League clubs have to compensate that?
Well, basically, because it was a breach of contract. The contract said you have to play this on this schedule. So there was a compensation clause, even though they got extra ones. They see that now all games are on TV is not always the best thing. They're not making any money. They're not charging any money. So why should they give more money to clubs? So they saw that they were disadvantaged during the lockdown of when they couldn't show games, and therefore the contract said they had a penalty, which is being paid over 2 seasons. This season and next season works out about £4 million a club. The other problem, which is not related to the British broadcasters, is the Chinese decided to the Chinese company that won it completely ripped up the deal. And everyone is having to pay the penalty of losing the Chinese deal, because that was going to be distributed across the whole Premier League. That deal's done. They can't replace it. Well, certainly not at anything close to the income, and therefore everybody takes a pay cut when it comes down to the broadcast fees that are paid for the international fees. So that's it. I mean, it's really contractual. You think, hang on, don't the clubs and the broadcasters have more on TV? But if you think about it, are you paying more for your Sky TV than you were before?
Depends on if you pay for Sky TV in the first place, mate. But,
yeah,
well, I'm with the Chinese because I've stopped paying and I've moved to streaming. So
my
that's
point
what the
is,
Chinese have done.
Although they're showing more games, the broadcasters aren't getting any more money, so there's no more money to give the clubs.
But this affects every club in the same manner anyway. It has that knock-on effect. Everyone's in the same kind of boat with that.
Yeah, and some of this affected. So the reason we've moved 5 games into next financial year, some of this is about where your financial year ends. So people like Crystal Palace have a later year end in June or July. Most clubs have it in May, like us. So at the end of the season. But yeah, basically a lot of our income was taken out of one year. So last season's income is being booked into next season, which will bump up this season and count for it will make up for the loss we're going to have in ticket revenue being missing pretty much for the whole season. Next slide, Steph.
Right.
I know what Russ feels like now.
It sounds like a COVID briefing. It sounds like a bloody... You're like Sir Patrick Vallance. Next slide, please.
This is where the money goes. So we spend, we spend 226 million, and this is why we lost money, right? Because our income was 140. You can work out how we lost money. Only down 3 million from what we spent in 2019. But there you go. Club operations to run the club is 166 million. transfers 60 million, wages accounted for 131 million. For all the people who said, "Oh, our wage bill will go way down," it was 136 million the year before. It's gone down 5 million to 131. You still have to pay stadium rent 3 million, depreciation of assets. We've hardly got any 2.5 million. We paid 5 million in interest, not just to shareholders, by the way, to banks as well. Amortization of transfers. So this is paying transfers in the books over the life of their contract, 60 million. And when you look at that, I'm not going to read it all out, but when you look where the money's come from over the last 10 years, it comes from a variety of sources. Some of it is about TV and club operations, as I've said. Some of it's about loans from shareholders. Some of it's about the sale of the bowling ground. And some of it's from, borrowing from banks, as we've done recently, and it's mostly spent on wages and new players.
Oh, you there? You're back.
Oh. You've only
You're
got
back, Sean. You're back.
Oh,
did you lose me?
We did
for a second. It's fine. Carry on.
Right, next one.
Losses.
So the losses. Look, I'm not going to read again all this out. Is we lost 28 million last year. We lost 65 million this year. If you spend more than you get, you lose money, right? We're still paying for transfers. We're still making transfer. We're still paying all the money for the last 5 years of all the transfers we've bought, and therefore we continue to. You can't keep on spending money, 226 million, and only bring in 140 million. So that's why we made a loss of 65 million compared to 28 the year before. I've said the impact of COVID has been the broadcast income dropped by 45 million. So that's 35%. That was the biggest drop. We've been through the other bits and pieces. The wage bill only fell by 8 million, 6%. It's really not going down because as we get rid of players, expensive players, Hernandez and LR and people like that, we just do deals with players to replace them. Everybody thinks you're going to get cheaper players, and it's not. Our wage bill is still absolutely massive.
Is that because we're still paying players even after they've left the club?
Yeah, some of them, but not mostly. Yep. But not mostly. Most of it.
I mean, it feels like fans would think that that's kind of a bit of a West Ham only kind of situation. We seem to be the only club that will get rid of a manager, Pellegrini, and then we're still paying his wages until he gets a new job. We're still paying part.
You know what? We're going to talk about that later. It was 3.5 million for him and his sons and Husilius, etc. I thought it was a bloody good deal to just pay him off 3.5 mil.
I'll tell you what. I wish I had a job that sacked me and then gave me a load of money.
Well, when you're earning 8 million,
we can arrange that.
when Pellegrini's earning £8 million a year and he's got 18 months in his contract, and when Husilius is earning £1 million a year and he's got 18 months on the contract, to pay both of them off and their two sons, the scouting network, for 3.5 million, I say job well done, personally.
Okay.
I'll just say I mean, to break it up, if we look at Zach Parker, just asked a question about where's the slide. Go back to his previous one. Where's the slide to show how much the club or the owners has embezzled? The reason why we haven't got that slide is because no one can show where they've embezzled money out of the club.
That's a very strong word.
And well, I see this bandied about a lot, and I ain't an apologist for Gold and Sullivan, but at the end of the day, I see asset strippers is another word thrown about them, and the only asset really you can say that they've got rid of is like the bowling ground. But they never sort of stripped it from the club. They sold it and used like half of the money they made to West Hamify the stadium. Now, we can all laugh about that easily. But at the end of the day, that's what the money went to. whether you got value for money for your 15 million quid, that's a different question.
Well, we're going to talk about that because you haven't seen the slides. We're going to talk about that. The last part of this slide is important because sometimes we live in our West Ham bubble, Stelios in particular. So
I don't get racist. He's Cypriot, mate. All right. Don't come over here out of town, Cockney, throwing your bubbles about.
He's more of an out of towner than me.
So while we lost 65 million, Everton lost 175 million, Chelsea lost 112 million, Aston Villa lost 99 million, Southampton lost 87 million. Newcastle, believe it or not, was the only club in the whole of the Premier League that made a profit of 3 million.
How's that at all possible? It's not on you.
Player trading or something. I don't know. I don't live in a Newcastle bubble, but Mike Ashley obviously sold some players to balance the books, etc. But just to show, while we lost 65 million, we did a lot better than a lot of other clubs who lost a hell of a lot more last year.
On top of that, we didn't furlough anyone. We didn't, lay any of the staff off, etc. Anton's as cockney as a kill.
Yeah.
We didn't lay off any staff. We didn't furlough anybody. So that I mean, despite the losses, I mean, West Ham could have easily gone down that road, couldn't they?
It could, and we're going to look at how much money they had to borrow just to keep on paying the players. Next slide.
With our new owner coming in, you mean? Is that who we borrowed the money off?
I think we've discussed this. I think we said, Everton 140, Southampton, Spurs lost 68, so they're slightly just lost more than us. Brighton lost 67, Villa lost 54. But the interesting thing for me is if we hadn't moved those 5 games, and Palace was one of those, our revenue would have been £42 million higher. So actually, it wouldn't have looked so bad last year if we had moved our year end to the end of when the season was, which is what some clubs did. But anyway, next slide, Mr. Stelios. So I thought we'd update on transfer spend because a lot of people don't think that we spent maybe so much on transfer spend, but the money we spend, remember, is you don't buy any players up front. You buy them over a number of years in installments, and the way that we account for them to immortalize them over a period of time went up again, rose 3 million to 60 million pound a year. So that's how much we've got on our books each year. 60 million pound was spent on transfer fees. Not all this year. It's a combination of splitting them over, regardless. And in that last season, we spent 108 million pounds on transfers. Now, obviously, I've listed them there: Allaire, Fornals, Bowen, Ajeti were some of the purchases, and Randolph. Souček arrived. Now, obviously, a lot of these have gone already. Some of them at losses, but if you look at a lot of the top clubs, Chelsea are no different. They can afford to gamble on sums, and some they win, some they lose. I'm not going to give an excuses. We've got lucky recently. We got rid of Allaire, made a problem on him, but a lot of the good ones lately, Bowen, even Fornals. At the time, I think a lot of people were saying, well, is he worth 25 million? But I'm hoping you guys would say probably he is worth 25 million now. He's sort of come good.
I think you could see that during the Pellegrini era, there were some purchases that have now proven to be unworthy. The Allaire, we've got Anderson still on the books, etc. But who now has total control of transfers? By the sounds of it, and I could be wrong on this, by allowing Allaire to leave for such a massive loss, seems to me that David Moyes has got much more control over
Yes,
who he wants. But that's not always been the case, has it? With managers and
no,
Sullivan.
it hasn't. But I think David Moyes put his foot down and said, they call him Due Diligence Dave. I know some people call him Dithering Dave, but Due Diligence Dave. I'm not sure he'd ever want a director of football. He apparently watches everybody. He's got scout people when he can out of COVID. He wants to do everything himself, and good luck to him. He just, we've seen this a number of times with Chelsea, where he just didn't want the player, etc. He had his doubts on Benrahma as well with the medical issue, and so I think he's very much his own man. And Sullivan has had to take a sort of back seat in thrusting players over or agents putting them forward. So we'll see. I mean, I think we've seen what Moyes can do, and he's got a lot of wins lately. All right, he got one wrong with Hugill, but I think that haunts him, and he's making a lot of right decisions. And while he's making right decisions, I don't see David Sullivan interfering.
So this is a comment which is quite sort of poignant to that. Zach saying, tired of hearing that we could have had 30 million to spend on players, etc. But he had apparently, I don't know, did he have 25 million in January to spend?
He had money available to spend, but he chose. But you can't have it both ways, right? He spends it in the winter, or he spends it in, and he spent a lot of. Don't forget, we paid off the deal in the summer for Souček. Nearly 15 million extra. All right, we got 20 million back for Allaire, but then Jesse Lingard costs or will cost about 4.5 million. £1.5 million loan fee, 2.5 million in wages, and another 500,000 if we qualify for Europe.
So, but what you've done there, and this is where people get annoyed with you, Sean. What you've done there is you've gone, we've recouped 20 million for Haller, without highlighting what the wages were recouped. But then when you've turned it into what we're spending with Lingard, straight away you've thrown Lingard's wages into the pot to inflate what we're paying for Lingard. And I get what you're saying, that the wages do cost money, but you didn't do that with Haller just now, did you? You didn't say, we've added Haller and saved his wages.
We've seen how much we spend. At the end of the day, this is pure maths, right? If you spend more than you earn, money is wages. And
no, I get that. But what I'm saying is,
the way you just, 140.
But the way you just presented it there, you went, Haller was just the fee that we got, and then Lingard, you inflated it by using the wages as well. So instead of saying, well, we got 20 million for Haller, and then we saved so many million for his wages, what we would have paid him, you didn't. And that's what I try and get through to you.
You're right. You're right. There is one.
You can't have it. Yeah. So the Lingard's wages was saved. Some of it is out of the savings for not paying Haller's wages.
All right, but then we've got to remember, if you want to bring that in, I'll bring up we haven't even finished paying for Allaire yet, and therefore we've got.
That has to be. That's got to be paid for at some point. You can't take a 50% hit on a player and not expect it to be paid out. I'm trying to get is way you present it is what's your undoing.
Yeah, but sometimes you've got to include. It's not as simple. People like to think it is. You buy someone, you sell someone, and you've got that money in the bank, right? Nothing is really up front. So you're buying a player on tick, you're selling a player on tick, and you're paying wages and agents' fees and all other overheads. So it's all in the mix, right? At the moment, the main thing we've got to talk about, because people get obsessed about how much we talked about, we've got 30 million to spend, right? The real thing we're talking about is cash flow and how much we've actually got in the bank to spend on installments, right? Not really at how much money we've got to spend. And you're right, wages and installments come into it, inbound and outbound. So I think we have to get away from the how much transfer budget we've got to spend in the transfer windows and think about how can we be sustainable and pay our wages and pay our installments, because at the moment we're not. We're spending in this year, although I said it was a bit false, we're spending 65 million more than we had the year before, which is probably more representative, we spent 28 million pound more than we had. Next year, we'll probably make a loss of around 25 million. We've spent 24 million pounds than we had. Where's that money coming from in the end? It's got to come from somewhere. You borrow the money, you get a shareholder to invest it, or you sell plays, right? It's pure economics. You know, there's no secret here. No one's put giving out brown envelopes, etc. The accounts are there for everyone to see. So it's I'm not trying to spin it. I'm just saying we've ramped up as transfer spend. The last bit of this slide says, you know, in the 5 years. Well, the interesting one is the one above, which says, you know, in the last 5 years, we've spent 411 million pounds. The last 5 years before that of their ownership was 129. We have massively upped our transfer spend.
And
but
Ken makes a point here.
The top six.
Ken makes a good point here, you know, and I think basically what we've seen with Moyes is kind of brought a little bit of stability to our transfers in a way. Is as Ken says, it's not about spending big or spending money on big name players. It's buying the right players. And you know, I wasn't that enamored when Moyes came back to manage West Ham, but I'll give him credit where credit's due. You know, he has bought wisely. You know, the Součeks and the Soufals and Bowen, and you know, all right, Fornals was a Pellegrini signing, but he has spent wisely. And we do question it. I mean, we all sit here. I sit here and question, you know, when Lingard was brought in the January transfer window, and we were all going, where's the striker? So he's kind of proving that you don't have to. I mean, Lingard coming in, if we do get Lingard for what the 15, 20 million that people are suggesting, that's a bargain, isn't it? And that is beginning to seem like a typical Moyes type of thing to do. He won't go out spending big money, will he?
This is where I get in trouble, right? So I'll get it out there and Nigel can go, shh. Right. The manager makes it, and Pellegrini was his own man, by the way. If you think that they're all Sullivan buys, you know, Allaire, etc., they're Pellegrini signings. The board make the manager appointment when they cock up like Pellegrini and they get someone who buys the wrong players and wastes a lot of money. They're blamed for it, yeah. And so equally, I think they should be able to take the credit when they employ the right manager who makes the right decisions, right? The two things are symbiotic and they're linked. And therefore, if you blame them for one, you've got to give them credit for the other. You know, they do the appointment and the manager, and that they either live or die by their sword, by whether the manager makes the right decisions and the right tactics and right players or not. So, you know, they fund this club. Nigel?
Well, I'm just letting that sink in. They fund this club. I think the
well, they did.
Account says that I think the accounts show that actually that's not quite right, is it? They're not funding.
Well, we're going to talk about it in a minute, Nigel. I'm glad you brought that up because we're going to talk about shareholders in a minute and etc. So let's go to the next slide, Steph, unless you want to stop to.
Well, yeah, but I mean, Luke's making a comment here. You know, they're not good enough. They don't have the revenue to run us like they apparently say they want to.
Well, when you say revenue, right? Do revenue is something different to the money? You know, their personal wealth, and you know, I don't think, although one of them's a billionaire and one's a multi-millionaire, they last put their own money. Well, until this year, they put their own money, and I'll talk about that this year in a rights issue. Obviously, they've not put money in since 2013. But they wanted West Ham to be sustainable without an owner just putting money in all the time. Interesting in the pandemic, where does Sullivan's wealth come from? Where it's come from commercial property. What's happened to commercial property? Well, people aren't paying commercial property rents because there's no one in them anymore. Property prices, commercial property have gone way down. Where does Gold's money come from? Well, Ann Summers. What's happened to the Ann Summers shops? Well, they haven't been open, you know. So it's been difficult times for all businessmen, but their two chosen revenues have been hit by the pandemic as well. But I think, even before that, they loaned money between 2011 and 2013, which is where they put in this £52 million. It's now down to 44 million. And they've been earning interest in that. But this year, and we'll talk about this in a minute, they also bought shares that they already owned as well to help fund the club. But
here's a question that's linked to that.
Sorry?
Bonnie, here's a question that's linked to that. Bonnie asks, why don't the owners convert the loans into shareholdings? The interest is a PR own goal.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question, that, because that's exactly what the Everton guy did. I forget his name. Moshiri, is it? Can't remember his name. Anyway, that's exactly what he did. He transferred his loans to shares and diluted the other shareholding for other people. Like, I can't answer that. I'm not here to answer questions for them, but they don't want to. I think I asked Gold this question before when I interviewed him on our podcast, and he said, Sean, I took that money out of his pension, right, that I loaned the club, where it was earning a lot more than the 7 or 4% it was earning there. And I made this, and I'll get in trouble for this, but if they'd invested that money in Bitcoin, right, that money would be worth a fortune in other things. In other words, there's better ways to earn money than loaning it to a football club, is all I'll say, right? You can earn more money than the interest they earn from a football club. Next.
Right, loans.
So it's interesting. So this is where a long time we've been borrowing money every year from Media Rights and Funding, which is allegedly funded by Michael de Boer, of bookie fame, and tried to buy the club. We were due to pay off the 55 million we borrowed from them in July this year. Well, we paid it off last week early, and it's like an overdraft. We pay 1% interest on the 55 million, and anything we actually borrow, we pay 7%. Okay. Now, during the pandemic, for the first time, we borrowed 20 million from Barclays Bank. Again, like an overdraft, it's due to be paid back in July. But the real interesting stuff, and this is where the rumours start, and we'll talk about this later, is Michael Dell of Dell Computers. That's him there.
Our future owner.
Our future owner. More of that later. He loaned the club, and this is literally in the last few weeks, loaned us 120 million pound facility. Now, we haven't used that 120 million yet, but it's over 5 years, so it's like a 5-year overdraft. We can call on that money when we like. Now, interestingly, we've already called on it because we used it to pay off the 55 million pound loan with Media Rights and Funding. And in July, we're going to use it to pay off the Barclays loan. So it will go to 75, right? And in the summer, if we make transfers, we're likely to call on it again.
So this question here, I mean, it's all this bump again going on in social media, on Twitter, that there's a consortium ready to take over West Ham United from America. Is this linked to Michael Dell?
Yes.
Or is this some other consortium?
Yeah.
Or are people putting 2 and 2 together and go? Because I said it in my show about
Michael Dell takes over next Tuesday, and Piers Morgan is taking over as the managing director from Karen Brady. Now he's not.
Anyone taking over from her will be a blessing, wouldn't it?
What, Piers Morgan? You want Piers Morgan as the managing director of West Ham?
I don't know. Let's just. What do people think? Karen or Piers?
Brady out.
Brady out.
Now, I'd like to. We did discuss having an April Fool's, but you have to do April Fool's before noon, and we're not recording at noon. Look, it's not true. It's really not true. I know there's been more recycled news, but it's been a slow news week. It's been an international week. Let me tell you now, there has been no bid from an American consortium, right? There's been no secret talks from American consortium, right? If the American consortium exist. It's so secret that no one else knows about it, and I just don't believe it.
Is that not the new West Ham way though? By keeping everything really stum, nice and quiet.
Yeah, right, Steph. Sorry, Anton. Yeah, of course. No, it's not true. And you know, I'm not saying never, but you know, these are the same rumours that have been going around.
Well, you know what people are saying. I mean, people have put. Well, I certainly did put 2 and 2 together, and I know I've come up with maybe 4.5, maybe not quite 5 yet. But they borrowed £120 million off one person to pay off all the other loans. Over 5 years, or you know, it's available over 5 years. They don't have to sell the club for another 2 years. So what they're, people are thinking. So Michael Dell's got, you know, we could possibly be owing him £120 million, as you've just said, by paying off all the other loans, transfers, etc. We could use up that £120 million pretty easily. Won't have to pay him back for that money for 5 years. We don't have to sell the club or owners don't have to sell until 2023. Won't they just turn around to Michael Dell and say, we owe you 120 million, give us another 400 on top of that, and the club's yours?
Still, hold up. What I think what people are missing here is that this is a finance arrangement that replaces a separate finance arrangement. So every year we've been using this media rights financing as a bank overdraft. So every year they'll borrow 40, 50, 60, 70 million and pay it back at the end of the year. It's purely for cash flow because of the way that the Premier League finances pay the money out. They don't get it all in one hit. It's dribbed and drabs, but there is cash flow that's got to be paid during the season. So they use this for that facility. This is replacing that. So it has to be used. So are they going forward? We're not getting these 55, 70 million loans every season. Because when you look at it, then 120 million over 5 years, when we're borrowing 50 to 70 million every year, which we're paying back through the Premier League money, it seems like there's a lot less money there to be used when you look at it over the 5 years.
I guess that's my point, though, Nigel. It's like,
but one thing I will say as well is, why are people starting to believe this American consortium again? Because one man, and I'm not going to criticise him. He says, "I've heard this, but it's a load of rubbish," basically. And people have heard him say, "I've heard this," ignored the "it's a load of rubbish" bit, and then they've gone on Twitter to their 30,000 followers and tweeted it out like this person has said this, and then it's like a ripple effect that goes out across the fan base, you know, and you get YouTube channels, not criticise you, but Facebook things having polls on what do you think of American owners.
Yeah.
Why? Because the bloke that said it probably ain't true.
Yeah, it's like Chinese whispers. You hear something, it gets slightly twisted when it goes on. By the time it gets to, you know, whoever wants to listen, they only hear a snippet. Oh, there's an American consortium. They haven't heard, as you've said, but there's nothing in it.
Yeah, but what I would say, then I like it is you then go out and you ask, well, is it possible then that we'll take this 120 million and we'll say to Michael Dell, we owe you 120 million. But that's a bit fanciful, really, because that 120 million is replacing over 5 years what we were getting 50 million every year. So
I kind of do. I do agree with you, but I just like playing devil's advocate.
Well, I know, but here's where, you know, I used to like Blackadder, right? And you remember the Cunning Lady? He goes, I love that idea. The only problem is it's bollocks. And the reason it's bollocks, right?
Family show, Sean. Don't swear, please.
It's Michael Dell's company, and it's Michael
after
Dell's,
the watershed, and Jake should be in bed. So you
and Michael Dell's company that looks after the wealth of his family. They've loaned money to loads of other football clubs: Southampton, Burnley, Sunderland, Derby. You know, they have become the basically media rights and funding equivalent. So Michael Tudor got involved with all the Premier League clubs and started loaning money. Funny enough, Southampton, Everton, etc. Well, nowadays, it's Michael Dell. I'm afraid it's pure money. You know, you might like to believe it, but he doesn't care. He's not a West Ham fan. He lends money to anyone as long as he's getting his 9 or 10%. He don't care who he loans to. I'm afraid it's a pure financial transaction. Wishful thinking on the part of people who say it's a take-up. I'm sorry, I can't bring you any better news than that, Stel and Anton and Nigel.
I'm quite, it's like the question I asked on your podcast the other day. I'm kind of a bit jaded by all this,
Yeah.
stuff.
Just to say on this slide, Trip Smith has still got his $9.5 million, which is only interest-free, which is only payable on sale of the club, while the shareholder balance goes down to $44 million. There's Trip Smith. He's not part, I hear, of an American sort would be easier. But here we go. That's what people say.
Can you stop dampening all our stories? Otherwise, I won't have a show to put on at the weekend.
I'm sorry. Next slide.
I thought it was Monday nights now still.
It's going to have to be Sunday because we've got a game on Monday, apparently. Fucking, can you believe that? Schedule. They don't, no consideration, Nigel.
No.
Absolutely not.
He's got more care for his show than the football club, Nigel, doesn't he?
I missed that. So can you
translate
that?
Fuck.
He's
got more care for his West Ham Weekly than he does for his football club.
It does.
Oh, stop it, Killy fan. Yeah, well.
So this is the bit where, they say, this is the bit where
we really fall asleep.
Take the money out, right? What,
Here we go. There we go. Really fall asleep.
What did they take out of the club in the last 12 months? Well, Sullivan, this is an interesting one. Sullivan made a £3 million short-term loan in December, which was repaid 7 days later on the 6th of January, with which interest accrued at 4%. And everyone's going, I can't believe he earned 4% for a 7-day loan. By the way, when you have to talk about interest, it's per annum, right? He loaned it for 7 days. So we only got, a fraction of that, 152 of that amount of, he hardly got anything. But if you look at why that happened, obviously transfer window, we need to get money in a hurry. We couldn't get money in a hurry. So David Sullivan went, well, there you go. There's £3 million. Pay it back in 7 days' time. Bob's your uncle. It was transfer related. Or we had to pay a installment or, whatever it was. The balance of the shareholder loans that they borrowed loan has got down to 44 million. They did they deferred this payment. Now this is an interesting bit. They deferred it to the 1st of January to 2024, whether it gets paid in 2024, because everyone's saying they're going to leave in 2023, but they deferred it to 2024. I think it will be kicked down the road again. They did also defer. They didn't give zero. They deferred nearly £2 million of interest. So they've deferred it. Instead of taking money out, they deferred £1.8 million of interest. We still got to pay it. So it's 44 million balance capital, another 1.8 million pound of interest they earn in the last 12 months that will add on to next year.
So, Fo made a point earlier in the show today. Who is to be blamed for the financial, he calls it a debacle at the club. I mean,
Well,
you've just mentioned about, well, this is, I'm going to ask that. Yeah, I was going to ask that question. You've been through the figures from some other clubs. There was a comment earlier that unfortunately has gone and suggested that maybe we're quite lucky that we're at the London Stadium because, as you highlighted, the money. I didn't mean it in that way, Nigel. I didn't mean it in that way.
He loves the place.
Lucky in the sense that we're not relying on turnstile money, whereas other clubs have been quite heavily hit. On turnstile money,
you're
more
right
than we have.
Well, also running costs, although we've still paid
and running costs is what
we pay the 3 million whether people are in there or not. So we still had to pay our rent even if people weren't in it. But you're right. It's not having so much money from ticket revenue is also a godsend when you rely on it so heavily, like Manchester United or Spurs or Chelsea, etc., who've got sky high prices for their season ticket. So there's a bit of truth in that. But I would argue the latest accounts, there's two things that have driven the losses in previous years. Obviously, last year related to COVID, but also related to Pellegrini project. The year before, we're still I know people don't like to hear this, and it sounds like I'm shifting the blame, but we're still paying for the Pellegrini project. I won't put blame and say, the board appointed Pellegrini, right? But we're paying. We bought lots of players on a credit card, and now we're paying the credit card bill. Simple as that.
Okay. Yep. Next slide.
Yeah. We talked about, and this is just an update of last time. When they took over, we had debt of 125 million, and we talked about at the time. So I won't read this slide. If we go up and we update it now, next slide. So 10 years later, it's somewhat increased, right? So when they get, who would take on a club with £100 million of debt? Well, it is massive now. But that's the state. I mean, lots of clubs have debt now. Spurs have debt, Liverpool have debt. As long as you can service debt, it's not a problem. Debt is always not a bad thing as long as you can serve it. So yeah,
a lot of people can ask the question: when the board came in, they saved us because we were so heavily in debt, and now let's take COVID out of the equation. We would have still been in debt even without COVID. Not to the extent that we're in at the moment. But so this whole mantra that the board, and I think this is what people get really upset about. We're moving out of the London, we're moving out of the bowling, to build a better team, a better this, a better that, Champions League football. We're gonna, we've saved you from bankruptcy, virtual bankruptcy, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And 10 years later, we're actually as much in debt now as we were when they took over. Or is that
I think
not
we're
true?
twice as much in debt. We're twice as much in debt.
Yeah.
But where is that debt gone? The debt has gone from bank loans, right, to owing it to other clubs and owing it to the shareholders. So
this point that Fo makes. Well, this point that Fo makes is that he doesn't think we're at the board are asset stripping. The board have proven to be quite incompetent at running a top flight football club. Would that be appropriate?
I'd see when you say incompetent. So naturally, I'll go, well, yeah. The problem, the finances is the club is the way they run the club. But it depends. See, if you believe that we were going to be Champions League football like they uttered in 2010, then have a look in the mirror, because that's the person to blame for believing them. Because it was never ever going to come true. They never had the money from the day they bought the club. So the fact that we've gone down, when we went down, it was under them. They appointed Avram Grant, but the club was financially hamstrung from when they walked in. And when they walked in, they made mistakes straight away. Now, they've kept us in the Premier League. Whether that's successful, that's all we should be grateful for. It depends on what you're expecting to get out from it. A lot of the animosity for the owners stems from what they said when they bought the club. 10 years on, they've failed to deliver on that. So everything goes back to what they said. Well, it's 11 years now, isn't it? But they've still kept a Premier League team in the Premier League. So is it incompetent?
Well, I think it...
is it that people still expect them to deliver on what they said?
I think it's incompetence on the basis of what you were just about to say, on the delivery of what they've done. And it's the way I suppose it's the delivery, physical delivery of what they do, the way they communicate, the way that they don't communicate, the way that the fans get the message, etc. When I think back to when Pellegrini was appointed, and when you read I think David Sullivan done a kind of a letter to the fans on the website, and in that letter he wrote, it was basically him saying, "You've asked for it, so I'm going to give you it." And I don't know if that wasn't what I wanted.
Oh, and now you get the propagandists that come out and say, like Operation Pellegrini. Yeah, and they use that as an excuse that the Project Pellegrini was the owners giving us what the fans asked for. So that's what the apologists say. And this is our part of the problem as well. Now some of it. Well, you do say that. You do say they gave the fans what they wanted.
We spent money. Look, the board appointed Pellegrini, and he spent our money, and we're paying for it. I thought David Lawrence not just brought up a good question here, but also the last one he did, and Zach made a good question. So he said, curious why we didn't have Bank of England loan like Spurs. It's quite simple that Spurs borrowed against their stadium. Got collateral, and we haven't got as much collateral, and you have to have certain collateral to borrow against the Bank of England, and we didn't qualify for it, quite simply. Otherwise, why wouldn't we borrow?
Couldn't we have borrowed against the club shop?
Sorry?
Couldn't we have borrowed against the club shop?
What,
we do borrow. Well, we do borrow against.
We own that. Don't laugh, Stel.
Do we own that?
That's ours.
We own a lease.
At least 50 grand in it.
I leased the land. I think we own the shop.
And David Lawrence's other comment, because two of them made some good points.
Let's see if we can bring up David. Do you remember what David said, or shall I try and
I think one of them was talking about you need to be.
We should be funding as a club. Is that the one?
I agree with what David says. Yeah, and Nigel's agreed with this in the past. I absolutely agree, 100% what David says there. We should be a self-funded club. Revenue from operations owners should only put cash in times like this or waited, which is what they did. If they continually put in money, management needs to be questioned. Absolutely, 100%, David. And you've said that before yourself, Nigel.
Oh no, I've long said that football clubs, I'd prefer it if there was a rule brought in where football clubs could only spend that the money that they generate, and perhaps with like the owners could top it up, so the owners would be able to invest of their own money 10 to 15% per year of their gross turnover. That's how I would like to see it, because the problem is then the club would have to go out and generate that income themselves, either via transfer market. You couldn't have, the owners of Man City turning up and literally, if you look at Chelsea now, Chelsea will go, oh, we're self-sufficient. Well, you are bloody now, but you weren't 15 years ago when the geezer turned up.
Yeah.
Because you blew everyone. Now, to be honest, we should be grateful Abramovich turned up to Chelsea, because he sort of saved our skin financially, because when we went down in 2003, he took some players off of our hands and paid some good money for them.
Yeah.
So we should be, but that's what happened. I mean, but you could throw that or go all the way back to the Premier League with Jack Walker.
Yeah.
Because actually, it was Jack Walker that started this by taking Blackburn, throwing money at Blackburn, winning the Premier League with them, and then everything snowballed from there.
Yeah,
you're not wrong.
Here's a question.
Right, let's probably get back to the slides.
One question from Scott. Now, I thought that by taking the loan out with MSD Holdings is consolidating the loans into one, is because they're paying off all the others. Is that not the case, or?
What was your question? Is it cheaper?
Well, Scott has asked the question, wouldn't consolidating the loans be a positive?
Well, I suppose so. But in the past, we were paying 7% to media rights and funding, right? I've got that from an inside source. If we're now paying 9%, so although we don't know the interest rate we're paying at MSD charging other clubs between 9 and 10%. So you've got to assume we're paying a minimum 9%. So, all right, we're consolidating their loans, right? But we're paying 2% more.
Or you're consolidating your loans and you're losing access to further funds.
But is it consolidating loans? Because it's actually replacing a loan. It's replacing a loan.
But I suppose they would argue that they've got longer term planning. So instead of worrying how you're at the mercy of media rights and funding one day, you go, nah, I don't want to give you.
So media rights and funding lent us 50 million last year. This season, with the higher place finish and the fact that our income will be significantly higher. All right, I know it'll be less with COVID, but that's the same across the board for every club. So every club's going to lose that percentage of income from ticket sales, which, as we've already said, is not that great for West Ham in the scheme of it. that they would then possibly have loaned us more money by taking that 120 million over 5 years. Next year, do we get another 120 million over 5 years? Or is it just 120 million over 5 years? Because then there looks to be next season, the season after, a bit of a loss, because every year we were getting 50 million and paying it back from the Premier League money. That's all it was happening. It was just being regenerated every year.
Until they outlawed some of that, Nigel, and then you had to loan against the training ground and other hard assets. So
yeah, but that was just paperwork, though, wasn't it? Come on, that was just paperwork.
It's security, and if you don't pay it back, then they could.
Yeah, but they know you're going to pay it back because you know you're getting a minimum of 150 million pound a year from the Premier League, so they know it was always going to be paid back. So it was only just window dressing.
Well, you say that, but it showed this year. You say that this year. Obviously, we didn't get 150 million. We got 82 million from the Premier League. So it shows that everybody got less because...
No, but then if you look, then you look and see, and I bet you in the next set of accounts, media fund or the money we borrowed or was given to us in the media rights, whatever they're called, Michael Tabor loans, you call it, the payday loan, would have been less to reflect the 16th place finish and the nervousness in the market to lend into clubs in the COVID times. So it would have been less.
Here's a question from Mandy. How many owners in the Premier League charge their clubs interest?
About 50. It's about 50-50. So about 50% charge interest and 50% don't charge interest. But we're not alone. Interestingly, we probably have charged over the last 10 years. It could be said that Gold & Sullivan have earned more interest, and this was up on the slide, than any other owners in the Premier League. But
here's another question from David. Just need a very smart footballing exec, CEO, director to run the club. Owners more money into the background and Brady out would be a good start. So there's been I've heard this on your podcast as well. Like, why not get someone in that's got a businessman that's got a footballing background, footballing brain, that will run the club as a football club rather than having Brady.
I don't disagree with you, and I suggested this myself. And is
that why Brady stopped talking to you?
Yeah, she stopped talking to me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Are we back on the slides or
still?
Yeah, let's go back to the slides.
Barry Manilow.
Barry
Mandy.
Manilow?
That song you just said. Oh, Mandy. It's Barry Manilow. Just for the people listening. Got a tear jerk of that song.
Next slide.
Shareholdings.
Right, the shareholdings haven't really changed, except one thing that sort of a lot of people missed was David Sullivan slightly increased his shareholding. They put £30 million in, so you might talk about the interest they earned, 20 million. Well, Gold & Sullivan and the other shareholders put in 30 million, so it wipes out. For people say they're on the take, it wipes out. Between the two of them as major shareholders, they put in 26 million. Now, his shareholding increased by 0.4%. We didn't know why at the time. Why didn't one shareholder not take up? And the sad truth of it is one of the shareholders died. John Harris died in September last year. His son, Daniel Harris, is on the board as a non-executive director. They own 1.1% of the shareholding. And unfortunately, when this rights issue happened in August, obviously John must have been very ill because he died weeks later. And I don't know whether his family will continue being a shareholder or whether they sell their shareholding. But that's why David Sullivan increased his shareholding by 0.4%. The Harris family have been West Ham fans. John Harris started Alba, Bush TV. If you remember all those, he made his money from doing that. But yeah, sadly he passed away. Whether someone will pick up that 1% or whether it will carry on the Harris family, we don't know. But David Sullivan now owns 51.5% of it. If we go to the next slide, we can just look at, if I remember rightly, Right. We did this. This is where we talked about Brady before. Look, this is where I go for a right.
Wake up, people. We're getting to the good stuff.
Here we go.
So she did get paid slightly, right? So for that year, she reduced. She only got paid £1 million instead of 1.1 million quid.
God, how did she survive? I mean, she must be at the new and food
bank. The shops ain't been open either.
Here's the funny thing, and slightly, this is why she gets herself in trouble. She went on and she had articles, and she said this publicly. She said, "I took a 30% pay cut.
Whoa, language.
I think you just described her in 4 letters, Sean, but I'm not sure we're allowed to say that.
Whoa! Hold on a minute. Right, that's Sean going for it. He's in the corner. We've backed him out. He's taking the sin bin for a couple of minutes. Holy shit! Here he is. You've had a minute's time out.
So did David.
What time to have a faux pas like that?
So did David Moyes, and so
that's
did
an audio grab.
He's already planned the show. He has planned the show around it. I can see it.
The accountants tell a different story. They say, like the players, she did not take a pay cut as such. She deferred her wages, and so did the others. So they deferred.
God, I mean, if she wasn't hated enough, Sean. I mean,
But look. £9 million over 9 years. So in the 9 years she's been there, she's earned £9 million. Up to people to decide whether that was worth it or not.
Well, she doesn't even work full time, Sean.
That's true. Although she's been working from home a lot, so she's been working full time from home.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
No, I think we've got the last slide. Or is that the last slide, or is there one more? I think there's one more.
Let's have a look. There you go. What could the future hold?
Like years ago, and Fo put up earlier something about Brady, about not being a decision maker. So why are we discussing the wages? And the fact is that now with the share rights issue, if you look, Brady's had more money out of this club than Sullivan and Gold.
It's true.
Is Brady a major decision maker? You bet your bottom dollar she's a major. In fact, she makes more decisions that affect us as fans than anyone else at that football club. And that's why I always champion Brady out over GSB out. Because actually, all Sullivan wants to do is meddle in the transfers and think he's playing championship manager or whatever it's called for real. Gold is just wheeled out to be Mr. 442 Green Street, and I used to slip in underneath the in the chicken run turnstiles for free. But don't try and do it at the Olympic Stadium, people, because you'll get a life ban. Yeah, but where Brady has just took, and it was her that actually did push through all the rubbish, the sales centre and everything. That was her doing, and the money grab from the fans. That's all her doing. The way the club is run, and with the day-to-day decisions made, the people that are there making decisions are put there by her, and they all report to her, and it is her that needs to go more than the other two. The other two we could probably deal with. Sit back, shut up, put your money up. She makes the decisions, and that's why we need a proper football person. Not a proper football person. Let's look at her list of the clubs. While we're bashing Brady, I'm going full nuclear. Birmingham City, not really good, are they? Let's face it. Sat on the board of Mothercare. Do you remember them people? Used to sell prams. Not anymore. Don't exist. But don't worry, because she was also on the board of Arcadia. Do you remember them? Used to run a company called British Home Stores. Do you remember them? Because they don't exist anymore, innit? That's her CV. That is her CV. And let's face it, it's I'll tell you what. I've never looked so good though. Hey. Charms like laser beams. That's what she's got. But that's why she needs to go. And her CV, how's she ever got to be like a business consultant to the Tory party? God help us. I'll tell you why she was mates with, and that's how she got in the House of Lords. Mates
She
with
can
her.
work a room. She can work a room, can't she? I mean, we all know that.
She
from the
can
history
work a room. She shut me up once.
not Nigel, not just you, mate.
Yeah,
Not just you. Like literally everyone that's came across her, haven't he?
Yeah, cross swords her a couple of times.
So we got the last slide. What will the future hold?
This is looking a bit ending with some positivity. So look, we could. I've done a number of.
What? When are they selling up then?
So I've done a number of predictions using this World Football Predictor League, and I've got some other people, and not West Ham fans, do it. Now forget Nigel because he's a miserable pessimist. But when I do it, and you can do it, you go to World Football Calculator, right, .net, and I fill in all the remaining fixtures. West Ham, every time I do it, finishes 4th, right? Champions League. On average, the treasures that await us in the Champions League, if we just qualify, on average, English clubs earn 72 million from being in the Champions League, right?
So 2 seasons in the Champions League and we'll be debt-free.
Exactly. Although you need to buy more players, of course. Europa League.
Well, not true, because actually we could keep the same players, finish bottom of the league table, and just bank the money.
Yeah.
You do get bonuses for wins and draws, though, in the Champions League.
Yeah. Shows that you don't watch my show anymore, Sean, because I spoke about this a month ago.
Yeah, and you
stop moving it then.
What did you say? Did you say the same things or not?
I said much the same thing. I don't know about my figures. I can't remember about the figures. But
20 million
Champions
if you get
League
to
is
Europa.
Yeah.
For the season merit payments, as I said, they dropped 300 grand a place because of COVID and the Chinese deal. But still, a 5th place finish would earn us 25.5 million when we earn 9 million last year.
Was that your phone? Is that Brady on the phone now?
Yeah, what the hell? Why did you call me a whatever I said? But here's the problem, right? And there's always a kick in the tail. The way the contracts are worked out, there's a number of huge player bonuses for finishing high up. So suddenly, if we finish 9th or above, we've got to pay all the players. They're all on position bonuses, so they get a share of all the money we get. So we don't get to keep it all. The players share in our success. Maybe that's right.
But there's no ifs and buts about it is Champions League football, whether West Ham are ready for it or not, would be financially well worth it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just to qualify. Qualify.
Look at what Leicester did. So and this is the thing, they come from nowhere to win that title in that mad season. And it now looks like we finished, until this season, that's our best ever in the Premier League. Which, while we put it down to Payet, we forget Leicester won the title. Tottenham finished 2nd when they hadn't really been in the top 4 for a while. Finished 3rd in the 2-horse race. We've got to forget it was Arsenal. Arsenal, I think, were only the only top 4 teams that finished in the top 4. Man City finished out of it. Man United. We finished above. I think we finished above Chelsea. A lot of the big teams missed out that season. Leicester, by getting into the Champions League and win that season, are now where they are now.
Yeah, very true.
They haven't been bankrolled because what they did was they've been clever. They got into the Champions League, but they also sold their best players for far much more.
For much more profit, yeah.
Far much more. And they've used that.
There was a question about that earlier. Why we seem to be one of the few clubs, if not the only club, that buys players. We never make a profit out of a player.
But why is that still? I'll tell you why that goes back to. Goes back to something I said for years. We keep buying 28 to 30-year-olds at the height, at the height of their cost price, and the height for their career. So the only thing they're going to do when they leave us is go down. Mm-hmm. We've had a couple of not lucky hits. We did well with Payet. And we did well with Arnautovic. We only did well with Arnautovic, though, because he went to China. He weren't going anywhere else. Apart from that, there's not many to write home about. But that's the problem, because we kept buying. And what it is that whose fault's that? Well, and Sean can go, Project Pellegrini. It's the owner's fault. because it was them that made promises to move to Olympic Stadium, felt the need to deliver, had to buy players for the there and now, not for the future. So actually,
but didn't even buy them there and now.
No, but that's the problem. They bought them for that 1 season, 2 seasons. That's all the life they were going to get out of them.
And there was a question actually right at the start of the show, the whole Pellegrini thing. Was that, are we when people are talking about Pellegrini had the money to spend? That's never going to happen again, is it? I know Moyes is frugal, but whatever manager we have in the future, we're never going to have that sort of money again, are we?
Remember, Pellegrini got the money from the Payet sale, because remember when we sold Payet, I think we shipped out, didn't we ship out Andre Ayew as well at the same time? We shipped a load of players out in the January window. He only brought in Hugill. I think there was like 20 odd million left over, or money made, profit in that window, and Moyes didn't even get to spend it. It all got given to Pellegrini. So
that's true.
And people are saying, Fo's saying the same thing as we've been saying. If there were competent people running this club, we've all said it, and we're kind of agreeing with it. The board could get themselves out of a little fix.
Hang on a minute.
Let me. Well, if the board, Gold and Sullivan can get themselves out of a little fix if they brought the right person in to run the club from a footballing perspective. Things could be a lot better. I think Moyes is doing that now.
I agree, but let's separate financial and footballing. Do you know what? I think the finance department do a very good job with it's all there. We spend it on wages. It's football, and our decision on what players we've spent it on and what wages we've given on is a real problem, and not. I think the finance people are good. We've been prudent. We've planned well. We've borrowed well. I don't think they can financial mismanagement. It's player buying and wages mismanagement. So I agree. It's more of a football problem than it's a financial problem.
Yeah. Do we have any more slides? Are we done?
We're done.
Is that it? Let's just. We got what? There you go. That's the end of our slideshow. Thank you for that, Sean and Nigel. Appreciate that.
Yeah, mate, I was just here to abusing.
Well, he did his own abusing. He called
There was another update I could have done, because the agent fees came out this year. So I don't know this week, but I didn't have time to update it. But we spent just under 10 million on agents, just been released this week, which takes
10 million on agents.
10 million. So it take down from 13.5. So we've gone down 3.5 million. But we've spent 88 million on agents in the last 10 years.
They have us over a barrel, don't they, agents? We've just been talking about the type of players that we bring in. Yeah, but we seem to be more over the barrel than others, as Nigel said.
Stelios, get out your bubble, right? Getting out your bubble.
Let's have a look at Leicester. We talked about Leicester earlier. How their scouts, and the agents that deal with a club like Leicester surely don't do them over the way we get done over.
Yeah, but you're talking about a club like Leicester who have for years not been signing players just for the sake of it, not looking at 40-50 million pound price tags just to appease the fans.
Exactly what I'm saying, mate. It's exactly what I'm saying. Leicester will not go. Whereas Sullivan, an agent comes to Sullivan and goes, "I've got this great player for you. He's only 35 million." And Sullivan and go, "Yeah, all right, let's take him." Leicester won't do that sort of thing, will they? So,
Sean, wake up.
Sorry.
That's for you, Sean. Whilst you're here, calm down with the clickbaity headlines. It gives him palpitations once a week.
And Zach's depressed. He said he's just watched a less depressing concentration camp episode of Band of Brothers.
I like.
I'll tell you, Zach. We've tried to make it as interesting as we possibly can.
Listen, you've got social media that stirs a pot. People grab a little bit of information and go wild on it. And I think the whole point of us doing shows like this is just to try and, I know it can be a boring presentation. I get it. It's fine. It's understandable. However, presenting to you what we believe is information you need to know. You take from it however you want to do it. But the whole point is there's nothing worse than when you go onto places like social media and people grab a little bit of information but don't read the whole story. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is reading further into the full story. And like you said, Nigel, a lot of people always go board, but don't think of the Brady concept, for example, and how Brady runs the club and how much money she's taken out from the club. And, she's the decision maker day to day. However, she's only working technically part-time at home, as Sean mentioned. So there's lots there to take into consideration. Any questions from anyone in the comments as well? I think there was loads we were bringing up.
I was putting up as many as I could, to hopefully, there's a lot of good comments that have been made. We put most of them up. So unless there are any more comments or questions, we could say we've done an hour and a half already.
Yeah, there you go. Off for good behaviour with your 8 listeners.
With our 8, well, yeah, exactly.
Well, and, the question. Here we go. Then I'll put a question out straight away. There's some people talking about this season in particular and saying that, is this the season that can save the board? So first question I'll put to you, Sean, is, in your personal humble opinion, where are you at with regards? I mean, this season's been a success no matter where we finish.
Yeah.
Where are you at with terms of the board and how West Ham have performed this season?
Look, it's a tough gig, right, for the board, right? They're damned if they do, damned if they don't. But I think, and I've said this when we did the stadium survey, their negative figures are going down a little bit. I'm not saying that they're loved universally, but results on the pitch help.
So your survey, the amount of people that take your survey, they're going down a bit. So
all right. Yeah. But 3,500 is still representative.
Before you make it sound like people are beginning to like them, it's just that those of us that don't couldn't be bothered to take the survey.
All right, fair enough, but it's representative. My point is that let's say we finish in the Champions League. I think it would be unfair to put it all on Moyes and not congratulate the board in the same way when they got relegated or the Pellegrini. I think the two things, I've used the word symbiotic, that they have got to take some of the glory. If we get Champions League, what an amazing feat
by Moyes.
And I hope some people just get off their back a bit.
It's an amazing regime. Listen, let's be realistic here, Sean. They brought Moyes back because they had not much other choice.
But that's the only part of credit you can give. That's it, in my opinion.
They tried with a big name. They blamed the fans for the Pellegrini disaster. And they went, right, we need stability. What do we do? Well, we've got Sam or we got David Moyes. Which of the two? Let's go back for David Moyes. It wasn't planned. It was by default, really. And it's difficult to really give.
You know what? I think. You know what? I speak to people that say, "I don't care. I go to watch football. I care what West Ham does on the pitch. I don't care about the politics. I don't care about committees. I don't care about GSB out. I don't care about the IC. I don't care about YouTube or social media or what people think. I support a football club. And
that's why I asked the question.
Well. And if they
that's why I asked the question the other day on your podcast, because, like I said, I mean, I feel jaded by it. I'm sure a lot of people do. Everyone's entitled.
Not the politics. You don't have to like chairman. You don't have to like the chairman. You don't have to like Karen Brady. You don't have to like the catering manager or the ticketing manager.
But what would be the situation? What would be the situation now if we were 5th from bottom rather than 5th from the top? It would be toxic, wouldn't it?
It would be toxic. But you know what? West Ham fans are never happy. And
I'll tell you what, then, Sean. Let me put this question then, the same question to you, Nigel. Nigel, as the guy that was canvassing for us not to move stadiums before we did. However, how many years after the 10 years is it? Are we 11 years? How many years are we into their ownership?
11.
If we do get Champions League football, and it's a big if, where is your head at, Nigel?
No. The thing with the next level, it's not a one-season wonder.
Exactly.
A next level is about a constant. So if we finish, this season's going to be a good season. But as I've said in other shows or wherever I go and whore myself out to, it's not about this season actually, because I can easily point back to the few seasons in the past where we've done this. So if the move's a success and they are taking us, like they said, to the next level that people are still waiting for, that I never believed they could, it's a constant. And a constant is 3 or 4 seasons. So next season we finished, or this season we finish Europa League. Next season, no matter what we do in the Europa League, we've got to finish Europa League again, minimum. And then once you've done that for 2 or 3 seasons, then you've got to look to push on into the top 4. It's not next level if we finish 4th, but then next season, get knocked out in the group stages of the Champions League and finish 13th.
So what you're looking at is the sustainability in this top 8 positions, regular finishes in there, European football, and then and solidifying our team in that position. So you're looking at the long game rather than the short game, which is something that we as fans were told, which is probably why you in particularly struggle with the board or the whole scenario, because
I struggle at times with certain sections of the fan base, because it's not the next level is it's got to be constant. It ain't about one season. And I don't know when the fan base but this is against all clubs. It's all about the here and now. Where actually it's not. It's about 2, 3, 4 years time going.
The model that we're looking at to aspire to, ironically, is Leicester. That's what we're looking to aspire.
Yeah, I mean,
because they, as you said, Nigel,
look at their debt though. They have gambled, right, to get where they are. Look at their debt. Look at their accounts. Still,
but they've just invested £100 million in training. They've invested in the club.
Of course they have.
Look at what they've got for their level of debt to what we got for our level of debt.
Are you suggesting a porter cabin is not good enough for us, Nigel?
It ain't about the porter, because at the end of the day, what would you rather have? No, and this is the thing. Would you rather West Ham go out and spend 30 million on better training pitches, or would you rather they go out and get a player?
And then it goes back to everything about, if you're a player looking at Leicester and West Ham, and you go turn up to the club and you get taken around the training facilities and you get taken around the stadium,
do you know what a player looks at? Yeah, he looks at,
I know money.
How much they're going to be paid?
Yeah,
where that club is.
Well,
let's face it. Come on, I've been to Leicester.
Yeah.
Right, it's not the most. I know I grew up in the East End, but believe me, I've been to Leicester. I know I was better off. And if you heard my recent podcast, you knew I grew up without a Kazi in the house until I was 8 years old, and I shared a bleeding kitchen till I was 5. I grew up in 3 rooms, so players will come. We're a London club. That is so much of a draw for a player. For a start,
here's an interesting question: would we have pulled if we were 5th from bottom? Would Lingard have come to us?
Yeah, but he might not next season.
That's true. Yeah. Sean, one question for you. I know you rate Kieran Maguire. You say you listen to his podcasts quite often.
I do love it.
And I know he's been doing shows lately with a couple of other groups, etc. And he's basically said, "I feel sorry for West Ham fans. The board have let them down, etc." Now.
Well, you're sort of taking that out of context, actually.
Am I? I don't know. Go on.
You're taking probably one soundbite out of an hour podcast, and you have to say it in context of what he says. He's very honest. He thinks the level of borrowing is not bad. The London Stadium, what they're earning for it isn't bad. They could do better by owning their own catering rights. But you've got to listen to the whole thing. Kieran is not biased. He doesn't live in your West Ham bubble, and therefore he's got no axe to grind. But what people do, and you're the same, you take one sentence of what he said in an hour podcast, and then he says he feels sorry. But you've got to do it, and why you feel sorry.
Okay.
Are you going to
And I
take
think
that lesson there still from the associate editor, Claret and you, about taking one little thing? Right. Are you going to stand there? Literally, because I know you're standing. Right.
No, I'm not.
Right. And take that from him. Oh, my life.
I was more distracted by the comment about him looking like Big Sam.
Oh,
Who?
you.
Me? Had a good lockdown.
What? You had a good lockdown? And
Yeah.
any more
Anyway,
questions or any other comments, or should we wrap it up? We've done an hour and a half.
I think we should wrap it up. Do you know what I say? Back the regime and the team, and love each other. That's what I say.
I think you're on a hiding to nothing on that one, Sean. You know, I don't. There's still a lot of people that, despite everything that we said tonight,
I sense you're anti-boards somehow. I never had you down as still, but maybe you
really. What made you think I was anything else? I just don't. I just don't. I don't shout.
I thought you were a bit more fair-minded.
Sean,
I am.
Snell's a sheep, mate.
Shut up.
Oh, he
mate.
just follows everyone else.
No, he's Greek, mate. They have goats. They don't have sheep. They have goats.
I was for the move. I thought it was a great thing that was going to happen, and I feel as much let down as a lot of people do.
Really?
I do. No, I look at. I think the you know, when we looking at these sorts of things is realizing just how bad we have been badly run from a footballing perspective. From a business perspective, Brady, she's as Nigel's alluded to, she's a businesswoman. Seems not a very good one, but you could argue from a business perspective, she's tried to squeeze out as much out of West Ham as she possibly could.
Right.
Is it for the good of the club? I would say no. Is it for the good of the football?
6th of April. Kent.
I'm going to use a line out of Mr. Kahn's recent podcast with Ian Dale. All talk, listen to it. It's a really good podcast.
It is good. It is very good.
But he said in it that, you know, if he had been successful in stopping the move to the London Stadium, everyone would probably be crucifying him right now of why we didn't take the opportunity to move to the London Stadium, because they wouldn't have known what it would have been like, and they would have seen Spurs and Arsenal and all the other clubs increase there while we stayed in Upton Park. So you can never win. People are never happy.
Yeah, it is true. It could have backfired if we didn't move. Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, you know, that's the bit that I think, looking back on it all, that's the bit that upset me more, moving away from the bowling. But no, you're absolutely right.
I'll tell you what upset you. It's not the move, yeah, but the reason why you believed in the move.
The reason why, yeah.
And this is the one thing that you and Sean will go, move on, it's time. But they've never come out and acknowledged that they got it wrong, and they would they'd win over a few fans. They would. There's always going to be those that will just want to drive them out. But they'll win over a lot if they come out and explain, do you know what? Yeah, we were wrong. We did this. Yeah. The last time they came out and done interviews, when? Like with fans, not the thing when. I'll tell you when. Just after the Burnley protests.
Yeah.
They were going on podcasts, David Gold, and giving interviews. Yet now they don't do that, do they?
Yeah. But do you think that's more down to the fact that they've decided just to keep? I mean, a lot of fans have said many times, we'd rather not hear from you. We just want you to run the club, and maybe that might be down to that as well. I'm not,
They really don't.
Who does then? Who runs the club? Brady.
Karen Brady.
Yeah. And the manager runs the football side.
And so it goes back to that question, doesn't it? If Moyes had a really good director of football manager to replace Brady,
I don't think he wants one.
I don't mean it just from selecting players.
Well, then you need to see. You've got to separate. CEOs don't really get involved in football. David Moyes wants to be the master of all things football. He wants to be he wants to look after transfers and all the footballing side, and doesn't want any interference from any director of football or any CEO. The CEO runs everything else. They run ticketing, they run customer relations, they run the stadium operations and all that bit. And the manager wants to be, and Sam was the same, and Pellegrini was the same. They don't want to report to another director. They want to. They want their board and their chairman to leave them alone to get on with the footballing side.
Does he report to Brady, or does he report to Golden Sullivan?
Yeah, he doesn't report to Brady.
Don't report to gold, does he? Deal.
Well, I know he hasn't got that many.
Well, I don't really think he reports in the same way. I don't think he reports to anyone. You know, not in the way that you would understand it, in a pure business way. You know, he has conversations with the board, right, and various directors, but I don't think he reports to anyone at all.
The thing is, always, Dan, if you look back, you look at the likes of the way John Lowell did not run the club, but John Lowell was the manager. He had his scouts, chief scout, Eddie Bailey. So they would go and look at players. And if you look at the signing of Frank McAvenny, they watched him 3 or 4 times. They then spoke to other people. And yet nowadays, David Moyes does that. It's called Dithering Dave or Due Diligence Dave. But what he's doing is you call it old school. And the reason why it's old school is because it's very modern now to have a scouting network that goes out and looks at all the Opta index and everything. Yet, but it's the manager that gets sacked, though, if he buys a wrong one, not the chief scout, not the Opta index people, not the video makers that put all these packages together, and not the agent that brings the player to the club. So Moyes, quite rightly for me, if he's the one that's sticking his neck on the line, he's the one that's got to look at that player in depth, take his time and do it, and then bring it in. And if we only sign 2 or 3 players, if that's what Moyes wants, that's the way it should be, because at the end of the day, he's the one that gets sacked.
Yep.
Yep.
Let's round it off. Anyway. Let's ask you for your predictions for the end for the season. Where are we going to finish? Start with you, Sean.
4th.
Okay. Champions League. Nigel?
Remember, Champions League can still be 5th as well this season.
I actually did the same prediction table with Sean, and I came up with 7th. I think on goal difference from 6.
You think we're going to slip a bit?
So I think there'll be a slip, yeah. But it will still be points-wise our best season in the Premier League.
Go on then, Still. Same one to you.
Me, I think we're going to stay 5th, and we might just slip to 6th. I think 5th might just. It depends on. It's going to be interesting because I think Pellegrini. I think Moyes is going to look at the last game and see that that losing that 3-0. We're winning 3-0, and he's gonna probably go a bit defensive, which might scupper our.
We've got easy running though. We've got a lot easier running than.
Well, not really.
Leicester, well easy.
Everton, Leicester, exactly. Chelsea.
Leicester have got a harder run in than us, and Leicester have got.
Can you believe Sean has us finishing above Leicester?
Yeah, I know.
No, I don't believe that.
Right, why is 5th Champions League?
You can't get champion.
You can if there is a few scenarios. So if one of the English clubs wins the Champions League.
Who's still left in?
Hold on a minute.
Chelsea, Man City.
You can. I know the max.
City.
Yeah. So you can have a maximum of 5 clubs,
but only if someone wins Champions League.
But if an English team,
if they win Europa League and they finish in the top 4,
that's I was going to say. Yeah. So
Europa League qualifies for the Champions League the next season, and if the team who wins Europa League is in the top 4. It's one or the other. It's a mixture of one of them, and then the position drops to 5th place.
I thought 5th was only if the team that finished 5th won the Champions League.
No, that's not.
I don't think it is.
Definitely, if an English club win the Champions League, there are 5 places. I know that. Well, assuming that team finished in the top 4, of course.
I'm not sure about that.
We're all
I'm
Man
not sure
City
about
fans
that.
for the rest of the season, aren't we?
I'm
Champions
not-
League wise.
Are you sure? Double check that because it's never
checked
been
it.
like that in the past.
Yeah, maximum of 5 clubs.
Yeah, but only if the team finishing 5th.
No, I did check that and
Won the Champions League, like when Liverpool won the Champions League.
Robert says, Gatesy says, can only finish 5th and get Champions League if the team finishing 5th
Thank you very much.
wins
that's
the
what he
Champions
says.
League or the
There you go.
Europa
Yeah,
League. Or
that's
the Europa
right.
League.
I don't know.
So hold on a minute. Or the Europa League.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
They've got to finish
okay.
5th.
Yeah.
So I reckon 5th. We might just slip to 6th. Nigel's gone for 7th. Sean 4th. Anton?
5th.
5th.
Yeah, I'll take 5th.
There you go.
There was one point up here. Where is it? I just want to say
It's Monday, Thursday, so I've got to get down to my religious ceremonies, whatever.
Jay Woods, the summer transfer window will really see the board's views for the club rather than the 13th finish for the year. However, the point I would make on that is it's really down to what Moyes wants.
Yeah.
I was on a show recently and someone had said that they reckon we need over 7 players, maybe up to 10 players. But we, I would rather us sign 3 players that Moyes wants than 6 players for the sake of it to fill up numbers.
Well, that's. I mean, I reckon we'll get maybe up to 5, which includes Lingard and Dawson.
So if
more.
you finish in the Europa League, do you invest for the Europa League?
No, there's no money in it. No. But you do if you.
Well, you invest anyway. We have to invest in some areas.
Yeah. But then it might determine how many players. I think if you get in the Champions League, Moyes might say, okay, well, there's money coming in from the Champions League. There's money in the bank, so he may buy 4 players rather than 3. Yeah. But I reckon he needs at least.
I don't think the quality of player. It would be the quality of player that he could attract. But I still think Moyes would go out with the same mindset, looking at the right player to fit into the right mold at West Ham, and that doesn't have to be your 70, 60, 50 million pound striker or player.
Those days are gone, mate. We will never buy a 50 million pound player again.
All right, if Souček, if Barcelona offer us 60 million or 50 million for Souček, what are you going to do?
I'm saying no.
Alex Kral is worth 15 million.
But what if Souček wants to go?
That's different.
I'll take it. 60 mil. Get Alex Kral in to replace him. He's only 15 mil.
Because this is the real test when it comes to the next level. Because West Ham were always perceived as a selling club quickly. Yeah. The problem is that if we do well and have a season like we did have, it's off the back of a player doing really good. I.e., last time was Payet, who was up for the Ballon d'Or, went to the Euros, and we did well to keep Payet for that first season at the Olympic Stadium after his performance for France in the Euros. So, but what happens now? Because if you look at Souček's just not doing it for us. He's doing it for us at the top end of the Premier League, and he's doing it for Czech Republic on the international stage. The big clubs around Europe are struggling, or if you look at who's going to win the league, it's generally not the people in Europe that won the league the season before. So Spain looks like they're going to have a new it. Germany's 50-50 with Bayern. Obviously, Liverpool ain't going to win the league this year with us. So those teams that are now not like, especially in Spain, where it looks like Atletico's going to look at it, Real Madrid and Barca, they're going to want to snap up the best players in Europe. And who happens to be one of the best players in Europe?
And Barca today have started that process because they're in talks with Haaland from Dortmund to bring him in.
And this is the thing. So
what I said, it's going to be harder to keep Souček than it is going to be to keep Rice next season.
If we can keep, for me, if we keep this team together for next season, just this team, and bring in a couple of
could win the league.
Others, well, no, but I think they'd have done well.
Yeah,
because that's always been the problem for West Ham. We dream of finishing at the top. Well, this is where you got to mute him because he just.
But you know what? Just quickly, used to actually, I'm sure the two of you came on ages ago, right at the start of the season when we were talking. Actually, it was before the transfer window shut, and I'm sure the two of you particularly said that if West Ham went into the season with the current squad that we've got, we would like, it's maybe not such a bad thing, and that point has literally been proven. Yeah.
Yeah, we did agree on that, actually.
Yeah.
Bloody hell. We should end there. Nigel and me agreed on something. One.
Right.
Let's end it because we've managed to eke out another 20 minutes.
You said that 10 minutes ago.
I know, mate. I know.
Right, so, still, close it off.
Mate,
we all love West Ham. And
couple of things. Nigel, it is a brilliant podcast, mate. So do let people know how they can hear it. You know, it's a good listen. It really is, the All Talk. It really is. So
on,
tell the people about it. Go on.
This is the bit I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
It doesn't like it, no, but go on.
Yeah, it was a strange thing. I've known Ian a few years now. Ian Dow, obviously, he's a radio personality. He's got his podcasts where he interviews politicians or famous people. This year, he's interviewed Cliff Richards. Cheryl Baker out of Bucks Fizz was a couple of weeks ago. And then
Cliff Richard, Cheryl Baker,
Tony Blair, Campbell, the spin doctor, and then for some reason, Ian says he wants to interview me. And just to show it up, the one thing I find funny is that the bloke before me, the Labour politician the week before, set a record for the longest All Talk show at 1 minute 30. Well, his record only lasted a week because I did 2 hours.
But here's the interesting bit, right? And I just want to say this about Nigel. I've known Nigel for 10 years. He's quite a private man, right? He is quite private about his private life. He reveals everything on this podcast that he didn't tell his wife, he didn't tell his dad and everything. And I learned stuff about Nigel that he's never told me in 10 years. So listen to the podcast. You'll find out as someone private, he spills the whole beans, don't you, Nigel?
Well, I don't spill the whole beans because it would have needed another 2 hours. And,
I was going to say that's part two. That's part two of the show next week.
I might have had other people knocking on my door. So
is it still for his West Ham Weekly, Nigel?
Yeah. I kept a lot out of it, But
it's good. It's a good show. Do go and listen to that. It's called All Talk by Ian Dale. It's a podcast. Do listen to it. It's excellent. Anything else from you guys? When are we back? Are you doing the preview on Saturday or Sunday?
Preview is Saturday evening. So what day's today? Thursday. So tomorrow, still, you're doing a West Ham Daily.
On Monday, I hope you're doing a watch along because I do love a good watch along.
Well, we'll invite you on, Sean.
Oh, because it's great.
Sean, you do actually enjoy our watch alongs, mate.
Yeah,
you know what the thing is?
He sits on his phone for like all the games.
Yeah.
And I go, what? Sorry? He's even doing that on the podcast. So, you hear it?
Listen, that's how he watches a game in the stadium. So it's just like he's being there.
So we are back tomorrow with a West Ham Daily. Saturday with the preview for the Wolves game. We'll have a Wolves fan on the show. Sunday, Stell's going to change his show again and do a West Ham Weekly on Sunday.
I'm doing a quick West Ham Weekly on Sunday. A quick
Who's your sponsor nowadays?
Don't have one. Don't have one.
We should get a new sponsor.
Security.
Stelios needs a new advert because his adverts are legendary.
Well, hold on a minute. There's no sponsorship, but there's a partnership.
Oh, who's your partner?
Who's our partner?
You know who it is? Umbro.
All right, yeah.
We just don't promote them a lot.
Why don't you do an advert about Umbro, Stelios?
Oh, don't worry, we're working on something.
It's going to be very deadpan like the last.
I want to keep that. I want to keep that Umbro link. I don't want to lose it.
Umbro, I've got some diamonds, and
so
really
we've got daily tomorrow, preview Saturday, weekly on Sunday, match day live on Monday, and then we're back to whatever
History
we're doing.
Week? When's that?
When's what? Sorry.
When's History Week slotted in?
I haven't told you, have I? I messaged Nigel and I asked him if he would do a West Ham historical weekly, and he's agreed.
Have you?
Yeah.
Well, what I said was I'll make one.
Here we go. He's up on the screen.
I think I said I'll make one and send it to you. I won't do it live, and I'll let you put it up.
No problem about if you don't want to do it live. But the concept is quite no cheese. The idea is that the week that we're in, There's always a story, a historical story in the week that we're in. So what I've asked Nigel to do, there you go, is to pick out a story. So let's say he does it for tomorrow, let's say, for argument's sake, 2nd of April, whatever historical West Ham story there is for that day, Nigel would do a show. What? Isn't that what you understood it?
Actually, here we go. Today, 40 years ago, we lost the League Cup final replay to Liverpool 2-1.
There you go.
There you go.
And if Billy Bonds had got out of the way of Alan Hanson's header, Phil Parkes would have saved it.
Finish it. We'll be here in 2 hours' time.
Have teamed up with West Ham United in sponsoring our channel for the matchday live videos. Our highlights. Enough of that shit.
Yeah. Cut.
40 years ago yesterday.
Go on.
Podcast listeners, 40 years ago yesterday, I sang at the Royal Albert Hall.
if you let us, we're carrying.
If you listen to the podcast, you know what I'm talking about. And
Anton, take control, or we carry on talking. This is what we do,
mate. Yeah, but this is what. Listen, exactly. Listen. We don't take control in this show. We just do what we want. We don't care. Listen, no. Nigel's our new signing, so he'll be here with you in a weekly show. Thanks, Nigel. Really appreciate it.
1 week only, as Sean will tell you.
yeah. Anyway, should we go on for another hour for Sean's sake?
No, let's keep it under 2 hours. Come on.
Listen, on the podcast, he drove to Guildford, picked his daughter up, and come back, and we were still talking.
It's true. It's true.
Right. Listen,
that's it. We're done.
He's been Sean. Where is he? There he is. Look, there's Sean.
We do appreciate. We do appreciate what you guys have done for the show
night tonight. Date night, remember?
Yeah, I know. He gave up date night tonight. There you go.
He's missing out on his fondue in the hot tub.
Still time.
Right. Thank you all. See you tomorrow for the daily. And boom.